So we're talking about how to avoid probate. And there are probably three groups of people who avoid probate. One is the person who has a very foresighted loved one who passed away. That foresighted loved one went to a trust attorney and had a trust prepared and put their property in the trust and basically created something that doesn't need to go through probate to be administered. Check. Another group of people, they have such small estates that you're not really required to go through the probate process. The value of the property is less than $100,000. Usually they can fill out an affidavit and do a mailing to all the heirs and say this is what's happening with the property and avoid it that way. And then the third group of people who avoid probate are the people who just don't do the probate process. You know, there's property in the estate and they just ignore it. What happens in that instance is that sooner or later, that delay avoidance just catches up to somebody. And so we see situations where somebody passes away and really it's uncovered that that person's spouse passed away 10 years earlier. And in order to complete the estate, we have to do a probate for the spouse as well as the one who just passed away. So the question is, how specifically do trusts work to bypass or avoid the probate? And the short answer is, it just works. Like, I don't know how my toothpaste whitens my teeth, but it just does, and so it works. The long answer is that a trust is it's a little bit of a fiction. It's a fictitious entity, sort of like a corporation or a limited liability company. It has its own existence, and so the trust continues on even though the person who created it may have passed away. And basically the trust will say how the property of the estate needs to be administered. And by and large, the courts will respect the dictates or what the trust says and not make it go through probate. When everything works right, the trust benefits you by allowing you to bypass the probate process. It also keeps the family affairs and the business affairs confidential. In a perfect world, the trust keeps you out of court. Now, the world we live in is not perfect, and so there are two common scenarios where a trust can wind up in court. One of those scenarios is where the person who's the trustee, who's in charge of it, is accused of not fulfilling their duties. They're being accused of doing things that are contrary to the trust and spending the money or distributing property improperly. And usually when they're being accused of doing something improper, they're being accused of not communicating and not providing adequate information to the other heirs. The second situation where a trust can wind up in court is where somebody in the family that either got disinherited or got less than what they thought was their fair share wants to blow up the trust or challenge the trust and say that the sister exercised some kind of undue influence over your loved one, or that some shenanigans were pulled that caused them to be minimized in their expectation from the estate. And so if someone wants to blow up the trust, then the place to do that, they will go to court and they'll take you to court and challenge the whole trust itself. There are lots of ins and outs and questions that come up in the context of trusts and probate avoidance. If you have any questions about your family trust, please give us a call at the Sierra Crest Business Law Group.